You know, when you think about giant monsters like kaiju, the image in your head is almost always about scale.
Oh, absolutely. The massive destruction.
Right. It's buildings crumbling like sandcastles, massive footprints cratering a city street. It's this very external, binary kind of destruction.
Yeah, and the humans are usually just these, tiny, fragile figures sprinting away from the falling debris.
Exactly. The monster is just this unstoppable, impersonal force of nature.
We're totally conditioned to view these stories from the ground up, basically treating the human element as merely the audience to a natural disaster.
Wow.
The emotional collateral damage is usually an afterthought to the physical spectacle.
But what happens when that physical destruction on the ground perfectly mirrors the quiet, messy, internal destruction of a single family?
It gets complicated.
Really complicated. Welcome to the Deep Dive. It is Friday, March 27th, 2026. And to the learner out there listening, the person who wants to cut through all the noise and get straight to the mechanics of a great story, we've got a fascinating collision to explore today.
We really do.
We are looking at the wreckage of Monarch's latest water cooler moment. I'm talking about Season 2, Episode 5 of Legacy of Monsters, titled Furusato.
And to really understand how this episode shifts the paradigm of the entire Monsterverse, we're pulling the narrative apart today using a bunch of great sources. We've got critical breakdowns from Slash Film and Screen Rant.
Always solid.
Yep, producer insights straight from Cinema Blend, and of course the real-time theorizing happening over on the Reddit community boards.
Those Reddit threads are wild right now.
They really are.
But we have to start with the emotional epicenter. Before we even get to the literal monsters tearing up the landscape, the show demands we look at the internal monsters tearing apart the Randa family.
Right.
The title itself, Furusato, translates to hometown, which carries this inherent sense of longing for a place or like a family structure that might not actually exist anymore.
Which is so fitting for Hiroshi.
Exactly. And we see this play out in a beautifully tragic 1990 Tokyo flashback. Hiroshi is pacing a hospital waiting room while Kentaro is being born.
And the show drops this massive generational anvil right there.
Oh my gosh, yes. Kentaro is actually named after Hiroshi's stepdad because his biological father was Bill Randa.
Handing down a name like that is a heavy piece of legacy to drop on a child. He is essentially telegraphing his own unresolved paternal trauma onto the next generation.
Yeah, and while he's standing in that hospital waiting for his secret second family to begin, Hiroshi is on a payphone with a young Kate from his first family.
Oh, that scene.
He's singing her to sleep with a Japanese lullaby called Furusato. It's this quiet, seemingly tender moment that is entirely poisoned by the context.
Totally.
Hiroshi singing a song about hometowns to one child while waiting for his hidden son to be born. It's the perfect encapsulation of a man trying to aggressively compartmentalize a shattered legacy.
Okay, let's unpack this because Hiroshi's essentially treating his family lineage the exact same way Apex Cybernetics treats the Titans later in the episode.
Oh, that's a great point.
He is trying to force a messy, organic, unpredictable reality into a neat, controllable box and just, expecting it not to blow up in his face.
Spoiler alert, it blows up.
Big time. In the present timeline, 2017 in the show, that compartmentalization finally fractures. Hiroshi has been harboring this intense, lifelong fury toward his mother, Kaiko, ever since reading her 1957 letter cutting off her affair with Lee Shaw.
Right.
He spent decades blaming Kaiko's infidelity for Bill abandoning the family.
And Lee Shaw has to be the one to step in and point out the glaring hypocrisy. You have Hiroshi, a man who literally abandoned two separate families, judging his mother for a perceived abandonment.
It's rich.
It is. And Kaiko finally shatters the illusion entirely. She tells her son she chose Bill. Bill didn't leave because of the affair.
That moment is so powerful.
You can physically watch decades of tension leave Hiroshi's body when he realizes his biological father didn't run away because he was a disappointment. It's a profound moment of psychological relief.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the show is utilizing the classic sins of the father trope, but they're grounding it in very palpable grief. The critics at Midgard Times specifically highlighted the nuanced acting of Takehiro Hira as Hiroshi and Mari Yamamoto as Keiko in this sequence.
Yeah, you're incredible.
Yeah, the high-concept sci-fi surrounding them only works because the pain these broken people are navigating feels so incredibly authentic.
I buy the emotional weight of that scene entirely, but I do want to push back on the mechanics of how we got there.
Okay, go on.
The review from Winter's Coming brought up a structural critique that feels spot on regarding the pacing. Hiroshi goes from absolutely furious, like holding on to decades of resentment, to spiritually enlightened almost entirely off screen.
That's fair.
It feels like we are missing a critical bridge scene. One conversation with Shaw shouldn't instantly cure a lifetime of pathological anger.
Well, when a narrative has to balance multiple timelines and, the impending arrival of a kaiju, the connective emotional tissue sometimes gets compressed.
Yeah, that's true. They had a lot of ground to cover.
But the narrative function of that forgiveness is purely to clear his ledger before the climax. Executive producer Tori Tunnell explained this to Cinema Blend. She said Hiroshi had to, quote, pay back his sins as a father.
Right.
She described his subsequent death as a painful but inevitable storytelling choice. Once a character's internal arc reaches its natural conclusion, their sacrifice basically becomes their redemption.
And man, that sacrifice is devastating.
It really is.
He throws himself into the path of a falling tentacle from Titan X to save Kate. As he's dying, Keiko and Kate hold him, and they start singing that same lullaby, Furusato.
3 generations bleeding out on the ground together.
And Kentaro arrives just seconds too late to hear it. It's a brutal end, but it brilliantly bridges the personal stakes with the institutional stakes of the episode. We pivot directly from Hiroshi's personal failure to control his double life, right into humanity's failure to control nature.
The micro reflects the macro perfectly, because then we move over to Apex Cybernetics.
Ah, yes, Apex.
They've quietly set up an outpost in Santa Soledad, Chile, and the location itself is a massive clue to the lore. The locals there host an annual festival called Kokai, specifically to celebrate the return of Titan X.
Which is so interesting. Historically, humanity found ways to coexist with, or at least respect, the natural cycles of these creatures.
Right, but Apex views that reverence as an inefficiency.
Yeah, they don't want to revere the Titans, they want to put them on a leash. Brenda and May execute this incredibly reckless operation to launch a drone and inject Titan X with a neural inhibitor chip.
A terrible idea.
Truly, they are trying to achieve full cognitive override, because Apex's ultimate goal isn't altruistic at all. They don't want to prevent another G-Day. They want to weaponize the Titans, hold the power to trigger a localized G-Day anywhere on the globe, and sell that remote control to the highest bidder.
What's fascinating here is the stark ideological contrast the show is building. You have Monarch, an organization whose entire philosophy, as flawed and bureaucratic as it can be, is rooted in observation, containment, and understanding.
Right, they just want a watch and learn.
Exactly. Then you have Apex Cybernetics, representing peak corporate hubris. They operate under the delusion of exploitation. They look at a biomechanical god and just see a programmable asset.
But the hubris is baked into the math, and it backfires spectacularly. The mechanics of this failure are honestly so satisfying to watch.
Oh, the logic behind the failure is brilliant.
The inhibitor chips Apex is deploying were only ever tested on smaller fauna, so when May tries to apply this code to Titan X, it triggers catastrophic data spikes.
Too many neurons problem.
Yes. The show explains that the kaiju simply has too many neurons, but biologically speaking, they are trying to push terabytes of control data through a biological modem built for kilobytes.
You can't override a decentralized deep-sea nerve cluster with a simple binary input.
Exactly. They try to put a shock collar on a hurricane and the entire system fries.
It highlights a profound arrogance. Apex assumes human technology, which is inherently linear and logical, can seamlessly interface with ancient, incomprehensible biology. The organic hardware literally rejects the software.
That corporate arrogance at Apex isn't just a faceless board of directors, though. It infects the people on the ground, which makes May's role in this whole operation so jarring.
Yeah, a lot of people were caught off guard by that.
I mean, we just spent the last episode watching May act as a double agent, actively stealing secrets from Apex to help her friends. And now, she's the one at the keyboard, pushing the button to Neuralink a Titan.
It's definitely a shift.
That feels like emotional whiplash. The Winter is Coming review pointed this out as well. Her motivation to suddenly buy into Apex's god complex just didn't feel earned.
It's an abrupt pivot, certainly. The charitable reading is that the writers are demonstrating how intoxicating the illusion of control can be, particularly to a character like May, who relies so heavily on logic and code to make sense of her world.
That's a good way to look at it.
The inhibitor chip is the ultimate logical solution to an illogical problem. But you're right, the psychological bridge getting her to that keyboard was shaky at best. However, her keystroke is what triggers the most biological, visceral sequence of the season.
Oh my God, it is absolute chaos.
Complete chaos.
When the technology fails, the show violently reminds us that the true connection between these creatures and the Earth isn't going to be forged by microchips. The drone successfully lands on Titan X's leg and injects the payload.
And we finally get the full visual reveal.
Right, and Slash Film noted the creature design is heavily modeled after deep-sea gigantism, giving it this unsettling Lovecraftian aesthetic compared to the mammalian familiarity of Kong.
Grounding the monster in a plausible evolutionary lineage, even at a colossal scale, makes its reaction to the implant all the more disturbing.
The moment the chip activates, Titan X screams in pure agony. But the biological defense mechanism is what truly blew my mind.
Oh, this was so gross, but so cool.
Right. The pain triggers a localized response where hundreds of subterranean scarabs erupt from the ground, swarm the affected limb, and violently chew it off to sever the connection.
Yeah.
It is a hardcore self-amputation survival tactic executed by an entirely different species.
Biologically, that is a brilliant detail. It proves these titans do not exist in a vacuum as solitary anomalies. They operate within complex symbiotic ecosystems. Think of the cleaner wrasse in the ocean or oxpeckers on rhinos, but, scaled up to apocalyptic proportions.
That is such a cool comparison.
Yeah, the scarabs acted as an external immune system, literally functioning as white blood cells attacking an infected appendage to save the host.
And once it's free of the tech, Titan X retaliates by simply erasing the Apex facility from the map.
Just gone.
But amidst all the screaming metal and falling concrete, Kate Randa has a reaction that fundamentally rewrites the rules of the show.
This is the game changer.
When Titan X is being shocked by the implant, Kate's nose starts bleeding. She collapses, whimpering in physical pain. She is experiencing a sympathetic, somatic link with the creature.
This moves the mythology away from mankind trying to impose its will via technology and steps into something far more symbiotic.
So what does this all mean? The Reddit community immediately lit up with theories. The most prominent one asks, are we looking at a scientifically grounded version of the classic Toho-Mothra twins dynamic?
The Shobijin.
Yes. In the old films, the Shobijin had a mystical, telepathic connection to Mothra. But in the grounded monsterverse, outside of the unique sign language dynamic between Kong and Jia, we haven't seen a human tap into a Titan's frequency like this.
Right, and if we look at it through a biological lens rather than a mystical one, it makes terrifying sense.
Also,
Well, Titans likely communicate via massive infrasound frequencies or shared bioelectric fields that humans usually can't perceive. Kate, having spent so much time in proximity to Axis Mundi in these creatures, might have literally had her own neural pathways or bioelectric resonance altered to match the Titan's broadcast frequency.
whoa.
Yeah, her nervous system is essentially catching the feedback loop of the monster's pain.
That makes the logistics of why Titan X is even in Chile so much more tragic. The team pieces together from Bill Randa's old 1950s map that Santa Soledad is just a stop on Titan X's natural migratory route from Axis Mundi.
But the Titan arrives 6 years early.
Yes, and we find out it's because of the Suzuki device. The acoustic frequency tech Monarch was testing on Skull Island didn't just annoy the creatures, it effectively scrambled their internal biological GPS.
Exactly.
Titan X didn't attack unprovoked, it was biologically hijacked, thinking it was migrating toward a feeding or mating ground, only to walk into a technological ambush.
Which is so sad, honestly. And this raises an important question about the fallout, because the geopolitical board has just been completely upended.
Right, Apex failed.
Apex's plan to control the Titans failed spectacularly, and Monarch now possesses the unvarnished truth about their operations. But amidst the destruction, Jason Trissop, played brilliantly by Cliff Curtis, by the way.
That's so good.
He uses the kaiju attack as cover to rip the hard drives from the Apex servers and vanish into the jungle.
The Reddit sleuths are having a field day with Jason. The prevailing theory is that he's not just a loyal Apex middle manager trying to save company data. They suspect he has a black market buyer lined up.
It makes perfect sense.
The hardware might have fried on Titan X, but the source code for the neural inhibitor is now out in the wild.
It signals the beginning of an unregulated arms race. The technology to weaponize a living god is no longer contained within a corporate silo. It's a rogue asset.
And while the geopolitical stakes are massive, the interpersonal stakes are equally volatile right now.
Oh yeah, the group dynamics are shattered.
Kintaro arriving at the exact moment his father dies sets a grim tone for the rest of the season. The fan community immediately zeroed in on the devastating, furious look Kintaro shoots at Lee Shaw over Hiroshi's body.
Kintaro is looking for somewhere to put his grief, and Shaw, The man who exposed the family's secrets just hours earlier is the most convenient target.
A factional split within the core group is inevitable. Grief demands a scapegoat, and Kintaro's anger is going to fundamentally alter the group's ability to navigate the escalating Titan threat, especially since the episode dropped one final lore bomb.
Right. Skull Island is a confirmed stop on Titan X's migratory route.
Which brings me to this, and here's where it gets really interesting. We are 5 episodes into season 2.
Yep, halfway there.
And as the Slash Film Review pointed out, we still have not seen Godzilla in the flesh this season, and Kong's presence has been relegated to the periphery. And a show called Legacy of Monsters is holding back the A-list titans testing the audience's patience, or does it serve a structural purpose?
It's an incredibly deliberate structural choice.
You think so?
Absolutely. If the writers rely too heavily on the established icons, the universe begins to feel small and formulaic.
That makes sense.
By focusing the narrative weight on a new, terrifying entity like Titan X, and crucially, tying the human cost directly to its arrival, the show is expanding the mythology. When Godzilla or Kong inevitably step onto the board to intercept this migratory route, it won't be fan service. The narrative will have earned their arrival.
It makes the world feel vast and dangerous again, rather than just serving as a digital wrestling ring for familiar CGI models. We just witnessed a masterclass in how to escalate a story. Furusato gave us the tragic redeeming end of Hiroshi Randa, the catastrophic, biologically poetic failure of Apex Cybernetics, and the lore-altering debut of a deep-sea titan.
It was an hour of television entirely focused on the hubris of trying to control the uncontrollable, whether that's a fractured family tree or an apex predator.
And to you, the learner listening right now, the takeaway here is deeply observational about how we operate. We all have a tendency to act like Apex or Hiroshi, trying to force complex, messy realities into neat, predictable boxes.
We really did.
We want the code to just work, we want the family to just smile. But this episode is a brutal reminder that you cannot rewrite the code of a complex system until you actually respect the biology of how it functions.
I completely agree. And I want to leave you with one final thread to pull, building on the science we've unpacked today.
Let's hear it.
If Kate Randa's nervous system has been biologically altered to form a somatic link with Titan X, just from her exposure to Axis Mundi, it fundamentally changes our understanding of human evolution in the monsterverse. Could other characters possess latent, undiscovered sensitivities to different Titans?
Oh, wow.
What if human biology and Titan physiology have been silently communicating through shared genetic or bioelectric pathways for thousands of years, and Monarch is only just now scratching the surface of our shared DNA?
That completely changes the lens we view this universe through. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love untangling the mechanics of these massive stories with you, and we cannot wait to see you back here for the next exploration. Until then, just remember, sometimes the monster tearing down your city is just a reflection of the one tearing down your house. Take care, everyone.